Okay. Hope everyone is doing well today. Oh. Happy Trans Day of Visibility to folks. I mean, it feels like a slightly less happy occasion every year, but is what it is. Reminder that while I will try and keep up with the chat, the one thing that will guarantee that I see your question and respond to it will be to do it as a super chat, which will also get you the little gay heart of appreciation from me. So I hope folks are doing well. That needs a bit of time to cool off. Hey, Ms. Wicked Wolf, Kev, Gabriel, Crunchy, Jocelyn. Oh, hey, Jocelyn. I hope you're doing okay. Hope things are going all right for you. Hulk, Julie. I'm sorry to hear you've had a bad day, Ms. Wicked Wolf. That, if I'm being honest, seems to have been going around lately. Got out early. Oh, well, I'm glad you could make it here. Anachronism boy. What am I drinking? I am drinking tea. We are keeping it very simple tonight. That is also still quite hot. So that'll be a little bit. Actually, tea Dove, not tea door, Avery. Trans Day of Remembrance is a different day. This one's Trans Day of Visibility. Am I visible? Everybody seeing me? Are you seeing as much of me as you'd like to? There are other sites for that. Recovering from a week-long cold. Oh, no. Sorry to hear that. Yeah. I feel like that's been going around, too. I've been focusing today on not looking at the news, instead having a nice snack. I'm trying to look at the news less than I have historically. Some days I do that better than others. How am I? I'm okay. I'm not great. I'm not going to lie, but I'm okay. That's kind of where I'm at right now. I had a good day because the weather improved. Well, it's finally warmed up where I'm at, although it was gray and cold rain today. Not icy rain, but it was chilly. So, Sorry, so tired today. Oh, you don't have to be sorry, Avery. I think that is an understandable mistake. Making arrangements to donate a car. Oh, that's very generous of you. I hope that goes smoothly. Like, there's so many things that, like, there can be a weird amount of bureaucracy and paperwork. Like, the one that really drove me crazy was how long it took for my divorce to get finalized. Now, keep in mind that when I moved out, there was no dispute over anything. We came up with our own schedule for the kid. There was no dispute over any assets. We decided who was taking what, and there was no argument about any of that. We had our own arrangement. We did not need the court to mediate anything. All we needed them to do was to sign off on the idea that we weren't married anymore. And that still took like 2 years. More serious note, I'm more visible at work now. Got a hyphenated male and female name so I can be openly by gender. That's great. Oh, I'm real glad to hear that. I'm really happy for you for that. That's wonderful. Just watched the 1993 Mario Brothers movie. Oh, that thing's a trip. I was surprised how badly aged the moment when Koopa shot down one of the twin towers, leading to a news reporter saying that's obviously for publicity was. Yeah, I mean, to be fair, that aged badly for reasons I don't think anybody could have predicted at the time. But that movie's something else. Oh boy. Been warm here today. The chickens are sunning themselves. Good for the chickens. Good for them. I listen to a few news podcasts and operate on the assumption if I really need to know something, they'll tell me. Yeah, I don't do, like, the closest I come to news podcasts is, like, I will often take in, like, some more news or Last Week Tonight, but they aren't really trying to cover the news as a whole. They are generally focusing in on specific topics any given week. That doesn't mean that I probably shouldn't, like, trim some of that out, at least on days where I'm not feeling great, but it's not quite the same thing as, like, the news. I love that movie. It's so weird. I kind of have a soft spot for it. I won't lie. I'm not going to act like there's no fun to be had with the thing. There is, but oh, and poor Bob Hoskins. He, like, in his later life, he cited that as, like, the worst filming experience he was ever on. Not necessarily the worst movie, although he probably thought it was that too, but, like, he just had such a miserable time making it. And I like him so much as an actor. I feel real bad for him. Choo-choo. Hang on. Am I still coming through? Am I still visible? Because it's weird on my end here for a moment. Hang on. Huh. Weird. Okay, so that is bizarre. For some reason, my preview screen is now gone, so I don't know what I look like. I can't admire myself. That's fine. It's just annoying. Am I going to watch the new Harry Potter series? No, of course not. Absolutely not. I didn't even watch the trailer. I would discourage anyone else with an ounce of humanity left in their soul for trans people to not watch it, please. Of course not. Absolutely not. You couldn't, like, that's on the list of you couldn't even pay me. Like, people can pay me to review stuff, and they do. That one is if somebody tried to commission me to watch that show, and I understand they'd have to pay me a lot. I charge a lot for full shows. I would reject it and refund them. Like, you could not pay me to watch it. I watch too much political commentary. It can be helpful to unplug. I remember when Trump got elected the first time, I had to. It used to be my default prior to that, where, and this was back when I still had the office job, that I would, I'd listen to NPR on my way into work, and I had to stop doing that because it was just too upsetting, and like it would make my ability to work just harder, like with all that nonsense. All that nonsense in my head. Is it Jen that you're divorced with? I'm not sure how serious that question is, Robo. And also, in terms of the specifics of my marriage, not really your business. Also, no. Have you watched Wonder Man? Yeah, Jason, I did a review on the secondary channel. It's pretty good. I do wonder if, like, it got a little overpraised just for the fact that MCU's been in a little bit of a slump, and it was just a relief to have something that's like, oh my gosh, that's like actually good without a ton of asterisks. But it is good. I don't want to take that away from it. Is it true Bob Hoskins was electrocuted while filming that film, or am I getting my facts wrong? I don't know anything about Bob Hoskins getting electrocuted, Gabriel. He did get his wrist broken. That happened while filming. So he did get injured on set. I just don't know anything about electrocution. Can we pay you to review Vera having a good time and doing whatever? I mean, there was somebody who actually like asked me, you know, how the standard review fee, like how long is that for? I'm like, generally up to 2.5 hours on the long end, like if I get commissioned for a long movie. And they were like, cool, can I pay you your commission fee for you to promise to take 2.5 hours of being fully unplugged and not working at all or running errands and just like relaxing? Can I pay you to relax for 2.5 hours? Bless you folks. You're all really wonderful. Why do a series when there's already the films? Money! Why'd you open up a second Krusty Krab right across from the original? For money! What do you think of this response? Right-wingers say that being progressive/liberal isn't the same as being woke or left-wing. First of all, what the hell right-wingers are saying that? And third of all, no. Here's the thing. In the abstract, there is, well, first of all, if they're lumping progressive and liberal together, they're already wrong. Progressive and liberal is not the same thing, and progressive and liberal is not the same thing as leftist either. So I can almost guarantee you they've already, like, whatever ones they're lumping together are already wrong. But I know that regardless of what they say, in practice, they talk about the left as basically anyone more liberal than dead center at best, in a lot of cases more liberal than frickin' Reagan. They literally lump everybody together. So no, what I think is that it is an attempt to muddy the water, gain deniability, and come across as being reasonable when they are frickin' not. So that's my response to a thing that I have not actually seen anyone try and claim. I imagine the Mario movie was a real scattershot production. Oh, it was a hot mess. It was an absolute mess. The directors, completely reworked the script. So, I'm trying to think of the real condensed version of this story. So, there was a script, and it was a script that, the actors signed on to do, but the studio couldn't find a director who they thought could pull it off and was available, and they could afford for the time frame they needed. And so when they landed on a directing team, I cannot remember their names now. It was a wife and husband team. They were the folks who created Max Headroom. When the studio landed on them, basically because they knew the studio was in a crunch to try and get this done before too much longer, because, the longer something's in development, you're just flushing money down the toilet. So because they knew about that time crunch, they basically were able to negotiate full creative control. And then they rewrote the script from scratch. They were rewriting it daily. They were letting some of the actors who were inclined to rewrite their dialogue. There were others like Dennis Hopper who stopped bothering to memorize his dialogue because it would change by the time he got on set from when he'd learned it the night before. It was a complete disaster made out of a combination of there not really being a template of how to adapt a video game to film yet, and there wouldn't be for a very long time, not a particularly overly successful one at any rate, and then paired with a directing duo who were given probably way more power than they were at a point where they could handle that responsibly. I don't want to paint them as completely I think that for where they were in their careers, they were given too much money and too much power for where they were and what they could handle. And it did derail their careers fully. I might find a way to watch the first episode of the new Harry Potter without paying, just out of morbid curiosity. If you're going to torrent it, I'm not going to get up your ass about it, but I'd ask you not, Granted, doing it that way in no way immediately puts anything into Rowling's pocket, but at the same time, you know, especially HBO, like they're known for doing this. They did this with Game of Thrones. They do monitor the, you know, the piracy numbers as best as they can be tracked, you know, which is a little vague, but they actually do consider that a metric of how popular a thing is. So I'd rather you didn't. If you were to ask me. And you don't have to. You don't need my permission. I currently hold no legal authority. Have you watched the Backrooms trailer? I did. It's interesting. The Backrooms and like that kind of stuff in general, that creepypasta kind of stuff, not really something I'm into. It was a decent trailer though. Could be good. It's when people try and bring up the example of the interracial Star Trek kiss, and they say that was progressive, not woke. Star Trek was not always woke. Oh, okay. They're just arguing in bad faith, and I won't be entertaining any of those ideas, because if that was done today, they absolutely would call it woke now. So they're simply trying to call it a different thing from when it's the frickin' 60s, so that they can pretend they aren't just horrible, awful bigots and would have been against the passing of the Civil Rights Act at the time, which they absolutely would have been, and they are. So it's all bad faith. Screw them. Moving on. Is there something you won't review, not because of a dislike of it, but because you enjoy it so much you feel like you'd have little to say about it? Is that even possible? For me, personally, no. Like, it is true, especially if I'm not trying to do a deep dive into something, if it's just a review, it can often be harder to find things to talk about when something's really good than when it's really bad. When it's really bad, you can just start cataloging problems and talk about why it doesn't work. When something's good, it's real easy just to fall into a pattern of like, and this is good, 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 go watch it. Which is, you know, but no, I wouldn't turn down a commissioned review because of that. But it is a reality that, again, unless you're doing a particularly deep dive or talking about a specific aspect of something and really drilling in on it, just broadly speaking, I find positive reviews tend to wrap up faster than negative ones or even mixed ones, just because, yeah, to explain why a thing is good is oddly harder because that is ultimately subjective. There are many times where something doesn't work. You can lay out a reason, or at least lay out a reason why it didn't work for you. But when it comes to why it did work, it often just comes down to, and that just was good to me, and it hit me in a good way, and I liked it. And unless you're, going to do a personal psychoanalysis on why, that tends to be shorter. Are you going to do rankings of Moffat and RTD written episodes like you did with Chibnall? Probably eventually. I'm holding on that because I want to be sure, that they're done. But yeah, probably eventually. Have you watched Infinity Train, particularly season 3? Season's really relevant and just so well done. I did. I'm pretty sure I reviewed all 4 seasons over in the break room of Geeks. Season 3 is really good. I don't know if I'd watch it again. Not because it isn't good, but because it's a lot. It's just a lot. Season 2 is my personal favorite. I'm surprised given how much we nowadays love sympathetic origins for classic villains. No one has tried that for Shylock. Because Shylock is a... To call that a minefield would be an understatement. It's only a matter of time before there's an SCP movie. I think that's going to be mildly iffy because SCP, to my understanding, and maybe I'm wrong about part of this. To my understanding, the SCP and the SCP Wiki has gone out of its way to be publicly available. So like in theory, could somebody make one? Yeah, but like it probably wouldn't have the backing of the community. And so what's the point? Like it's such a niche thing. If you don't get the people who are already into it on board, then that's kind of a red flag for everybody else. The main thing I thought from the Backrooms trailer was, well, Tom's gonna have to do a 5th part of his meme movies ranking series. Oh God, Rowan, you're right. Oh no. Oh, somebody go check on Tom. Oh dear. Are you a fan of the 2023 animated Mario movie, and do you plan to see Super Mario Galaxy? Not particularly, and no. The only reason I even saw that one was because it was on a plane. Are you a member of the Free Speech Coalition? Sex worker kind of alliance, union-ish thing. I've joined, but I've been too disabled to do camming lately. I actually am not overly familiar. I feel like I've heard of that. It's not something I've looked heavily into, and no, I don't hold any membership. I was very into creepypasta growing up, but I don't really keep up with it anymore. As a child with unfettered internet access, or I was a child with unfettered internet access, but I've largely grown out of online urban legends. Yeah, I mean, again, like I get the appeal of them, but yeah, it's not super my thing. Season 2 of Infinity Train is my favorite just because of how relatable I found Lake. Oh, Lake's great. Like, Lake's great. The deer. I should rewatch that. I have the first 2 seasons on DVD because those got physical releases before it was, whole thing was yanked off of digital. Just popping in to say happy Trans Day of Visibility and rock on. The new He-Man trailer came out. Reminds me of Thor Ragnarok, but I think the movie's going to be good. I saw it. Like, nothing about it grabbed me in. Honestly, and like maybe this might not, strictly speaking, be the movie's fault. This might be an impact of how heavily CGI it is and probably has to be by its nature. But, like, I'd say about a third of the shots in that, I'm not going to say they were AI generated, because I don't think they were, but they reminded me a lot of AI generated fake movie trailers. About a third of the shots in that. And, yeah. It didn't do anything to endear itself to me. I watched your Haywire review and thought, why do some filmmakers think realism automatically has more artistic merits, like the dead-faced animals in Lion King remake? I mean, with Lion King remake, like the thing is, I'm not sure all of them do actually think that. I think with something like the Lion King remake, that was a matter of like that was literally the only way to justify it. Because you couldn't literally film it live action. I mean, you could try, but like it would take forever and be a nightmare. So like that was really their only option, and at that point, you just need to lean into the realism of it, because otherwise, it's like just watch the freaking animated one. But for something like Haywire, for people who didn't see my review, I criticized Steven Soderbergh's use of very realistic punch and hit sound effects, i.e. it doesn't have that sort of pow sound that we're used to. It just sounds a bit more like you're slapping wet meat, which is what somebody actually getting punched sounds like a lot of the time. But like, there's a reason sound design has been done the way it is with stuff like punches, to make it feel more impactful and like, ugh. It makes you feel it more as an audience member. The thing is, I'm not sure Soderbergh necessarily thought it was more artistically valid. I get the sense from Soderbergh a lot of times he just decides to try something to see how it works, and like, why don't we try this? And I don't Soderbergh, for art, as artsy fartsy as he can get, he doesn't strike me as pretentious as a lot of filmmakers who are like, oh, it should be realistic and natural. Can be. Like, the main place where I find it infuriating is when dark and nighttime scenes are lit naturally and then you can't see a damn thing. I'm like, just, I don't care if it's unrealistic that I could clearly see this face in the dark in the woods. Let me see the damn person's face. But like, that's not new. I remember that being an issue back in the 90s with frickin' Michael Mann and Last of the Mohicans, which is a good movie, but there's a couple of shots in there, a couple of scenes. It's damn hard to see what's going on. She-Ra and the Princes of Power really built its entire existence around the bold cinematic question, what if Masters of the Universe was actually about something? No, it was actually like, what if the vapid girl-centric spin-off of Masters of the Universe was actually about something? Yeah, I noticed that old web shooter that they didn't include it this time. I think whatever they were trying to do, it didn't land. You know, you have people like me calling it out as leaning into the idea of it, making it an emasculating space and like more of a hellish space for him. He's not supposed to be there. Look, they gave him pronouns. And then people on the right were like, oh, pronouns, bleh, because that's what they do. Then a whole bunch of people in the middle going, I think it's a joke. But even they didn't seem sure. It may or may not show up in the movie, but I wasn't shocked when it wasn't in the trailer again. It sounds like Leto is taking a Skeletor voice from Langella's version. Maybe. I have no intention to see it, so. I might not watch the new Harry Potter show at all of them, but kind of don't want to have to start thinking about how corporations are reaction to everything I click. I mean, like, look, your dad is sold, buddy. That's just what happens, and it's BS, but it is what it is. I've been getting AI ads faking 3D blankets for printed fleece blankets. Weird. Yeah, the fake AI ads are always really strange, especially when it's like, you know, you could have just filmed this and it would have been really cheap to do. What do you... It's so strange. Can't believe we're getting a Moana reboot, especially since it's been 2 years since Moana 2 came out. I know Disney's a greedy company, but damn... Well, I mean, like, it makes slightly more sense when you keep in mind that Moana 2 wasn't supposed to be Moana 2. It was supposed to be Moana the series, and they reconfigured it into a movie. So there wasn't supposed to be this bumping up of a Moana sequel and the live-action remake, because one was going to be on Disney Plus and the other was going to go to theaters. But then when they realized that, oh, when we spend hundreds of $millions on projects and put them on Disney Plus, we actually don't really get much in the way of returns on that. And this thing's a money pit. So they're like, let's get it into theaters and just try and recoup some of this. But of course, that just makes the Moana live action remake all the more absurd on its face. Okay. There we go. Got my tea. It's finally cooled enough that I can... Oh, that's good. Do you think they'll do a Thundercats live-action movie? If the Masters of the Universe movie does gangbusters business, maybe. But in and of itself, unless they think they have a trend to ride, no, I don't think they will. Just because of expense. It's going to be... It's going to be real expensive and real difficult, because you're either going... I mean, you're almost definitely going to have to involve CGI if you want the full range of facial expression, but you're either going to have cat people in like prosthetics, and then it's basically going to be accused of being furry bait, or you're going to go more CGI, probably still get accused of being furry bait, and it's going to be even more expensive to do. So, yeah. Have you seen the Moana wig pics? I mean, I saw the trailer. It's whatever. I recently got to meet Jodie Whittaker at MegaCon. She was so sweet. She seems real nice. I do hope I get a chance to like get a picture with her at some point. Perhaps the She-Ra showrunners could reach a deal with Arrow Video to get them a physical media release, seeing as they're bringing out the Stranger Things Blu-ray. I don't think it's in their control, Rowan. That would be up to DreamWorks, not the showrunners. Like, you need to remember, with very few exceptions, showrunners, head writers, original creators of TV series hold none of the rights for that stuff. DreamWorks owns that. What kind of tea? It is a mix black tea. It's called the blend is called Artemis. Supreme Omega, thank you for the super chat. On Bond, even though Blofeld and Spectre are seen as the iconic Bond villains, they only appear in a small portion of the franchise. Do you still find it odd? No, because other than maybe Jaws, they're pretty much the only major recurring ones. And also, like, you say Spectre only appeared in a small portion. Like, that became increasingly true, from the 80s on as more films were made without them. But that was because of rights shenanigans. It's worth remembering, Spectre gets name dropped in Dr. No. Like, Spectre as an organization got referenced, and Blofeld as an individual got referenced in way more movies than we tend to think of. So there was like an extended buildup before they even showed up. So no, I don't find it all that odd, especially considering like there aren't that many other recurrent villains to compare it to. Like, the other iconic villains are ones that were just so memorable that they only had to appear once. You know, your Goldfingers and your Oddjobs and well, again, Jaws actually did appear more than once, but that kind of thing. I'm watching Monarch, Legacy of Monsters. I keep forgetting that that's something that actually came out. It's interesting seeing the Godzilla and King Kong lore be fleshed out. Doesn't really have a natural ending. It's bound to repeat itself eventually. Well, I mean, as long as folks are having fun. So no Biker Mice from Mars live action movie. God. The things that were made in the wake of success of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, it really was like coming up with ideas by Mad Lib. I saw Jesse's video on Andy Weir, both him appearing on Critical Drinkers podcast and what he said about Star Trek. Killed my interest in reading Project Hail Mary. I still want to see the movie, though. Like, I will say this. I'm glad that I'd already read the book and seen the movie by the time that stuff happens. I don't want to spend too much time on this. I'm actually going to highly recommend everybody check out Jesse's video. It was on her secondary channel, I believe. It's actually really well thought out and really measured. And, like, she brings up some stuff that, frankly, I need to keep in mind for myself sometimes. But, like, the fact that my respect for Andy Weir has dropped considerably, it does not take away from the fact that Project Hail Mary is an extremely good book. So, like, if you still can't bring yourself, that's fine. I get it. You've seen the trailer to the Backrooms? Yep. Drew, somebody asked me that earlier. I kind of want a live-action Gummy Bears movie. Look, if I could get a live-action Gargoyles, I'd take that. I'd take that one. All right, I need to pop over to the Discord and check on what questions I've got over there. I will be back in a few minutes. Let me see. Suppose you work for a publication that was going to require you to review the new Harry Potter show. How would you handle it? I cannot answer that question because it is a hypothetical that demands way more context than we have time to work out. Because my answer would depend on, like, how long have I been at this publication? What kind of relationship do I have with my superiors? What kind of a financial situation am I in? Can I afford to potentially jeopardize this job by taking a moral stand? Can I not? Like, This is part of why I suck at hypotheticals. My brain wants full context, and that's not what hypotheticals are for. That's why I generally don't answer them. Moving on. A while back, Channel Pop did a video about how food stands have switched for using clip art to AI for their generic images of food to put on their signs and trucks. Would you be more inclined to be forgiving towards a guy running a falafel stand using AI images than like a fellow content creator using AI, like because the falafel guy arguably has more of an excuse to not know anything? Like, would I be more forgiving? Yes. But also at the end of the day, if there's two falafel stands next to each other, one of them is using AI imagery and one of them isn't, I know which one I'm going to go to. Like, I know I'm very hardline on the AI issue, and I'm not going to stop being hardline. I am not unaware of the fact that some people don't get it. And there is some degree of allowance I'm prepared to make to, okay, how much should they, though? Because there are some people like, you have no excuse not to know, and if you don't know, you are deliberately remaining ignorant because you like this tech and don't want to face the reality of it. But there'll be like people on my like on some of my social media feeds, like people like sharing full on AI videos or whatnot. I won't say unfriend them. I will frequently mute them because I'm like, I don't want to see that. But like, I have friends who still use like the AI filters, you know, to like do a cartoon version of yourself or whatever. And I don't like seeing that, but also like, it's not worth getting a fight over, especially for like who some of these people are and how tech savvy I can reasonably expect them to be. So like, it's not like I will throw all context out, but like I said, you show me two food trucks, one of them has AI imagery and the other has the clip art. I'd rather read it the clip art. Does using robots as an allegory for oppressed minority in a story have the X-Men/mutant problem where it's problematic because there's actually a rational reason to be scared of sentient AIs? It really depends on the specifics of the robots and how the world is built. Potentially. Not automatically, but potentially. Is Christopher Eccleston right? Does Doctor Who need a female showrunner? Need? I don't know. Would it benefit from? Yeah, I really think so. I really do think that more than anything, getting out of, like, look, regardless of what you think of RTD's second era of running Doctor Who, the simple reality is that they have been circling this same very small pool of aging white fanboys, and it is healthy for any property to just not have their talent pool stagnate. And not only to get new blood in there, get new blood with a new perspective. So I think doesn't need it. Look, I'm not going to say he's wrong. Saying that it needs it feels like a mild overstatement. Would I cheer it? Yeah, I would. Given that Force users in Star Wars are a fictionalization of the Eastern versus Western orthodoxy, are they? I actually have not heard that before. I'm not doubting you, I just hadn't heard that before. How would you disrupt that dynamic if you were assigned to writing Force users in Star Wars? I don't think I'm enough of a Star Wars... I'm not into enough of Star Wars lore to feel like I would even have a pitch. Like, and I'm familiar with the concept of Grey Jedi, which I'm pretty sure is non-canon, but like, that's the easy thing to pull from. Marvel, DC, or Indies? For comics? Indies. What are your thoughts on the Glitch production TV show called Amazing Digital Circus? It's good. It's gotten increasingly good as it's gone on. It's not a show that I've talked about. When the final episode comes out in, June? I might talk about the first season as a whole. Like, the early episodes are fine and cute. And, like, they do kind of need to be what they are for the direction the show goes. It couldn't, like... The stuff that went on in episode 8, you can't start there, and you do have to build to that point. But yeah, it's pretty good, especially considering one of its primary influences. It's real interesting. What are your thoughts on the What are your thoughts on episodes of Doctor Who like the Zygon Invasion? Because I asked because you said in your Interstellar Song Contest that you didn't know that you didn't like how Doctor Who had handled the lack of nuance of violence in that episode. So I was wondering if you now don't like the 12th Doctor's speech in the Zygon Invasion. Okay, so a couple things about this. I'll try and keep it simple. The first is I haven't rewatched that two-parter in years. So, and I haven't rewatched it since, stuff like Gaza has started happening. So I have an overall feeling that I would probably have a little bit of a different takeaway of a blanket condemnation of violent resistance. That having been said, it's already automatically way, way, way better than stuff like Interstellar Song Contest, if for no other reason than while the Doctor is directing most of that speech at the Zygon, he is there to go after both sides of that conflict. He's not just wagging a finger at the upstarts, he's wagging a finger at Kate and Unit 2. So that helps. And I think if I were to guess, I'm not saying this is my current position, but if I were to guess, I suspect that I would probably, at this point, think a little bit less about that speech from a writing standpoint, although that does absolutely nothing to diminish Peter Capaldi's ability to deliver that speech. Regardless of whatever shifting feelings I may or may not have about the substance of it next time I rewatch it, which again I haven't in a while, I don't think I'm ever going to back off from saying he delivers that astoundingly well. I recently completed an employment course with a trans person who went by the pronouns that/it. I didn't really feel comfortable using those pronouns regarding them because I worried if other people heard me describing them as it, they might think I'm transphobic and deliberately trying to dehumanize them. Have you ever been in a similar situation? And if so, find a way around that issue. Not really. Like I think I knew in person like one person who had kind of an it's identity, but like I was in my 20s and that was in Boston and I only kind of remember. So I've mostly encountered either neopronouns or, atypical pronouns like that as the preferred pronouns in online spaces. In other words, written, so it's something to be aware of when typing, not when speaking. It's not something that I've personally encountered in person, with one kind of exception. Now, this isn't quite the same thing, but it is my answer to finding the way around that issue. So I host burlesque shows on a fairly regular basis, and on the host notes that I'm given, in addition to performer's name, upcoming shows that they have that they want to plug, their intro and tagline and whatnot, I'll also be given on the host notes their preferred pronouns. And there's one performer who doesn't put down any. And like, you can fill that in yourself. It's not like a Dropbox. So if the answer was any pronouns, this performer could put any. But this performer does not. And so I don't use pronouns at all. I use proper nouns. I use this performer's performance name in full every time, because that just means I'm not using the pronouns. Because remember, the purpose of pronouns is to replace proper nouns. So in my mind, the easiest way to get around is just use the proper noun every time. Does it make it slightly awkward in a more casual conversation setting? Yeah. But it does mean you don't have to use pronouns that you're uncomfortable with. Are you concerned David Tennant is now the Bookies' favorite to play the next Doctor, even somehow beating out Billie Piper? No. Forgive my language. Fuck the Bookies. Like they have had Billie Piper high on their list for freaking like 16, 17 years. They've had high odds on freaking Jenna Coleman. Like, screw the Bookies. The Bookies are idiots. Disney has reportedly told Deadline reporters that Doctor Who was, quote, too woke for Trump's USA. Why do you think Disney is suddenly sucking up to Trump and listening to the anti-woke crowd? Okay, couple things about this. First of all, this is not new. This is from October. There was a Deadline article back in October, and it is not accurate to say that someone from Disney said that. The actual thing, because I looked it up, is that a well-placed industry source says Doctor Who became, quote, too woke for Trump's USA. and that this was, quote, a factor in Disney's minds. This person is not speaking for Disney, is not said by Deadline to be an employee of Disney speaking under anonymity. They're saying a well-placed industry source. That does not mean somebody actually from Disney. Does that mean the assessment is wrong? No, but it's just flatly inaccurate to say that that's something that Disney or someone from Disney said. As for like the sentiment behind it, it's the exact same reason that they were leaning progressive, in earlier years. It's the same reason that they were leaning into private events for a time. They go where they think the money is. And in the case of Trump, it gets complicated by the fact of, okay, so here's the thing. And this is not to excuse or for anyone to be forgiving of corporations. They're amoral entities. They own too much. They control too much. Fuck them. But it is always worth remembering that when it comes to Trump, the normal metric of will our audience grow or shrink if we do this is no longer the only metric, because Trump is such a vindictive and corrupt, I'm just going to swear right now, so roll with me, piece of shit who will wield agencies like the FCC, the FBI, or whoever he feels like, and just throw regulatory bodies at any group he doesn't like, that not ticking off the anti-woke is no longer just about whether or not it is more or less lucrative from, do we grow or shrink our audience? Because you have a giant toddler throwing tantrums in the White House who can make your life miserable if he feels or his base feels that you are pandering to the woke, regardless of whether or not you are. And his willingness to make companies' lives, I was going to say easier or harder. He actually doesn't make almost any company's lives easier, but his ability to make their lives harder when he's upset, which happens for any and no reason, that has completely thrown off the standard thing. So I would not take, and again, this is in no way a defense of them, I would not take Disney or anyone else's shift towards not pissing off, quote unquote, Trump's USA as an indication that they think that's actually what is best for their market share or anything. It's just that there is this giant elephantine toddler in the room flinging his shit everywhere, and they're trying not to be targeted with that. So Trump's presence completely messes up a whole lot of the normal things that would normally go into these decisions. It's pretty uncommon for an entertainment company to give a damn about who is currently in office when trying to figure out what to do with their properties. But Trump is not normal. Like by any presidential metric, he's not normal, and so stuff gets weird. Anyway, spent longer talking about that than I would have cared for. I am back now. Did we get super chats while I was gone? No. Okay, there we go. How would you feel if Maxine Alderton, writer of The Haunting of Villa Diodati and Village of the Angels, became the next showrunner? I don't know enough about her resume. And what I mean by that is, like, has she showrun before? Because, like, show running is not necessarily the same skill as simply being a good writer. Now, like, many showrunners start out as just writers. And when I say, I would say this of whether you were floating a man's name or a woman's name, like I would want to see more of someone's resume. Especially because I find both of those episodes to be badly overrated, and I'm not really a big fan of either of them. So there's also that. The question about the Doctor Who female showrunners, like as a progressive, can you imagine any context where you actually say, yeah, actually more diversity would be bad? I can't for Doctor Who, for sure. But, like, here's the thing. There are certain things, there are certain properties, there are certain types of stories that would not benefit from a necessarily greater diversity. So, like, I'm trying to think. You know what? I'm not going to bother coming up with a specific example. But if you're going to tell a story about, about male characters in a very masculinized setting, and you are intending to be honest, here's the thing. While I think their output is crap, the output of the creative output of the anti-woke wouldn't benefit from diverse voices in the creation process because it would go against the intention of the art. Now, it's bad art, and it's art I would rather didn't exist, but it still has a right to exist. And there are certain stories that I would say for it to be the best version of itself, I'm not going to say diversity would be bad, but it wouldn't help, if that makes sense. I think there are some stories, some settings, some archetypes, some types of character studies where a more homogeneous creative approach makes a certain amount of sense. And again, that's not me saying that diversity would be bad, just that it wouldn't automatically be helpful for certain specific kinds of stories. Now, you may or may not like the kinds of stories that probably don't necessarily benefit from a greater diversity. And that's fine, and that's your right, and I'd probably agree with you. But I am going to say, there are some stories where I'm like, again, I doubt I would ever say diversity would be bad, but I can envision situations in which I would say diversity wouldn't help. So I guess that's as close as I get. My very hot take is Doctor Who needs a break. Honestly, there is part of me that... Part of what was shocking about finding out there's going to be a Christmas special this year was I had already come to terms with the idea that it was going to be a 3 to 5 year hiatus, and I'd also kind of come to terms with the idea that maybe that would be a good thing. Stu Bagfull did a video kind of recently kind of confronting the idea that a lot of fans have that it has to stay on the air. We can't let it like it's a beached whale that needs saving or something. And look, there are plenty of properties, and Doctor Who at this point might be among them, that would benefit from time off. Do you risk the possibility that time off is longer than you want? Yeah. It was 16-year hiatus last time. But that doesn't mean that it wasn't ultimately a healthy thing for Doctor Who. I think you'd have a hard time making an argument that, as frustrating as the wilderness years of Doctor Who might have been for fans at the time, I think you'd have a hard time arguing that it would have been better for the show creatively to have been continually running those entire 16 years. Just saying. I actually think James Bond should always be played by a cis white English dude. And I don't like Bond films for that reason. Yeah, to not have James Bond be, cis white English passing, because actually a fair number of the actors aren't English, strictly speaking, is kind of core to that character. And at a certain point, if you shake that up too much, you're not really doing Bond anymore. And again, that can be a reason you don't like Bond. And it'd be a totally valid reason. Got into Stu Bagfull through JXE. Oh, nice. Stu's great. I've known Stu for years. I kind of know Jay a little bit. I know Stu pretty well. Stu's a friend. I started watching during the wilderness years. Yeah, it can honestly, for some people, be less intimidating. It's like, oh, there isn't new stuff. Oh, cool, I can catch up. But, that's a matter of perspective. Only let RTD do episodes, maybe 2-parters, no more showrunner duties. No, I don't agree with that. Would it be fair to say you don't think it would have helped Dot and Bubble if it had a more diverse cast. Well, in the case of Dot and Bubble, it literally would have been counterintuitive to its message to have a more diverse cast. And I think you knew that when you asked me, so. You can shake the Bond contents, just don't stir them. Have you been watching Paradise on Hulu? Nope. I have not. I'm not sure what it is. So, no. So it's not even like a matter of, I have decided not to watch that. Like, I have heard of that, but I also don't know what it is. So, nope. If someone asks you not to use they, them, and you do it anyway, is that misgendering? My understanding would it can't be misgendering them to use they, them, so it'd just be kind of rude. I mean, how do I put this? Trans, non-binary, bigender, genderqueer people's relationships with the phrase they, them can be very, very personal and very wildly. They, them, by default, is kind of a good gender-neutral or all-purpose term. That having been said, you can and will encounter some people, usually somewhere within the non-binary cluster of identities, or agender, which is separate from that. But still, there will be some people from those sorts of identities who don't super enjoy it for whatever reason, or would still have a preference for something else, or you might have someone who has she, they, but people keep defaulting to only one or the other, and they to the point that they kind of don't want to hear the one that gets used almost exclusively because people are ignoring the second one. Like, I'm not saying that I hold these views, but I've encountered that, and I know it can be a point of frustration, especially for a non-binary, like non-binary people using they, them is the most common, but it is not automatic. And if someone says, please don't use those for me, you need to try, like, whether I call it misgendering, I don't know. That gets into a lot of semantic knots that I don't feel like untangling, but like, it would be a dick thing to do if they asked you not to. I haven't watched James Bond. The closest is the parody trilogy, Austin Powers. Only the first Austin Powers is any good. I would rather... There's a lot of James Bond movies I would rather watch before the second two Austin Powers. Paradise is turning into a sci-fi show. It's excellent and I highly recommend it. I guess it'll go on the maybe someday if I have time list, which is long. I didn't realize that it was trans day visibility, but I felt very happily trans, so still a good day. Oh, good. I'm glad to hear that, Crunchy. I would argue that, at least for me, I'm on a bit of an RTD burnout, teasing nostalgia, then back off from those threads. Been particularly annoying for me in seasons 1 and 2. RTD... I will not say that there was nothing good that came out of his return. There were some absolutely phenomenal episodes that came from his return. 73 Yards is astounding, and Dot and Bubble is really, really staggeringly good. But in many ways, I feel like he should have come back just for the 60th specials. Because I feel like most of his best ideas went into those, and then when we got to him actually running proper seasons, it was kind of trying to go back to business as usual, which I don't think was healthy for the show, and I, for one, wasn't super excited for. Am I too late? No, Black Cover, but I am going to have to wrap it up soon, and I do have to have a hard stop tonight. On tropes, how come writing an overarching big bad villain behind the shadows is so hard to write? Because there are more bad examples than good. Thoughts? Yeah, so... All right, hold on. Trying to write long-term villains is difficult for a multitude of reasons. So the kind of villain you're talking about, like the overarching big bad villain, the main problem with them is they are often very abstract and not particularly visceral or immediate. Like, you can think of something like Sauron from Lord of the Rings. Is he intimidating? Is he a threat? Yes, but he's also just like this big eye and a tower. And so a lot more immediate threats have to be developed to actually have a visceral issue, something that needs to be dealt with in the more immediate. The general difficulty with trying to write overarching big bad villains is either they are so far off in the distance that and they aren't really dealt with until the very end, at which point the heroes don't really have a relationship with them. And so it's all very kind of abstract. Or if you try and make them a more immediate and direct threat to the heroes, then in most cases, they are going to get repeatedly beat by the heroes until they get beat for real. And that's sort of where you get the cliche of the ineffectual villains from like Saturday morning cartoons. You know, what happened with Shredder and Skeletor and whatnot. They just get defeated so many times you can't take them seriously anymore. So the balance that is really hard to get right, and I don't have the secret answer because I don't write those kinds of villains generally, is that you have to find the balance between, you know, someone who is this big overhanging threat, but not have them seem too abstract and too distant from proceedings, while also avoiding the flip side of that, which is to have someone who's more immediate, but keeps getting defeated or thwarted to some degree, simply because if they don't, then the story's over too soon. So you see where the balancing act is. Why is it hard? Because balancing these kinds of elements is hard. It just is. And I don't have an answer. Brendan Fraser's playing Dwight Eisenhower at forthcoming D-Day drama Pressure. Huh. Okay. Anyways, I do have to wrap it up. I'm a couple minutes over, which I shouldn't be. But thank you all very much for joining me. I hope everybody stays safe. If Trans Day of Visibility meant anything to you, then I hope you had a good one. And take care of yourselves out there. And take care of the people around you as best you can. So take care of yourselves. Be well. Be safe. Be kind. And please remember that you are beautiful. You are valid. And you are loved. You're the council. I'm just running the meetings, and until next time, this council is adjourned. McCavity!